And we are live. Welcome to greeneconomy.tv. At greeneconomy.tv, we provide insight and intelligence on all sustainability related matters. Today, we have two phenomenal guests Scott Carnby, GM of Thermguard, and Gordon Brown, publisher of Green Economy Media. But before I go ahead to start the show, let's give you some of this.
As a society, we need to focus on the resource intensity required to create a product before we look at the potential savings it can generate during its use. There are countless energy-saving products on the market, but have you ever asked yourself what went into making these products? Think about the raw materials which are extracted from the earth. Are they renewable? How much electricity and water are consumed during the manufacturing process? Most importantly, ask yourself if the manufacture of a product is sustainable. The primary raw material used in Thermguard is newspaper, which is made locally from plantations of sustainably grown South African trees. Too often, insulation is chosen based only on the amount of electricity it could save, but the electricity and water usage, as well as the emissions during manufacture, are seldomly considered fully. Cellulose fiber insulation requires 10 times less electricity to make compared to fiberglass, and around 14 times less than polyester insulation. Between 20 and 100 liters of water are consumed during the production of fiberglass and polyester, while no water is consumed to make Thermguard. The unsustainable decisions of past and current generations have severely affected our world. Choosing Thermguard insulation is one of many small decisions which can assist in making one big change to our world and its future generations. Remember, Thermguard is recycled for your future.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
Good, and you?
Good, excellent. So today I'm just here to facilitate the show. Gordon will be asking all the relative questions when it comes to green and to installation, Thermguard side. So I'm going to leave you guys and to get the show started there.
Thank you very much indeed, Byron, and Scott. Welcome to the show. Great to have you, and great to see some of the insights there from that short video clip that we watched there. But beyond that, maybe I can ask you just to give us some background, tell us a little bit about Thermguard, some of the projects you've been working on, some of the intricacies, and I know you also the GM, but you mentioned you're also the factory manager, so you've got some deep insight into how things are made and all the rest. So perhaps just give us a little bit of an embellishment on some of the content that we've just seen in that video there, please.
Yeah, sure. So Thermguard has been around for the last 36 years. It was started in 1984. We make ceiling insulation and wall insulation as well out of recycled newspapers. So it's a very green product. It's the greenest insulation that you can get because it contains such a high amount of recycled newspaper. More than 80% of the product is recycled newspaper. The balance of the product is chemicals, which are salts that are added to the mixture to make it fire retardant and insect and rodent repellent. So it's also the only insulation that actively prevents insects and rodents from living in it, which is something that fiberglass and polyester insulations don't offer.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's a blown-in insulation, which means that the bags of insulation stand outside the house or the building, and they fed into a machine which blows the insulation through a pipe and into the ceiling, and that process allows the insulation to fall into all of the small nooks and crannies, and it basically covers the entire ceiling without leaving any gaps and crevices. So what that does is it stops the movement of heat and air much more effectively than any type of rolled insulation by a factor of about 25%, according to tests that we've done in-house and tests that they've conducted in America as well.
So obviously it's contributing to the building, it's contributing to the envelope factor, because obviously it's fitting in, as you say, where there's no gaps, and it's like fitting right into the corners and so on and so forth.
Exactly. So yeah.
So I mean, insulation. It's an interesting thing in this country. I think so. We all know that if you build in places like the US, Europe in particular, even Australia, if I'm not mistaken, it's quite a common thing at the stage of building, and given the building methods that they use to insulate a house, it's almost like a standard practice to insulate. But that hasn't been the case in this country, and I've even heard some pundits and architects say, oh, you don't really need insulation in this country. I mean, what's your comment about that? I mean, what sort of energy savings can we achieve from insulation? And perhaps talk us through some of the different building types. Obviously, there's the home, and I'm not sure if you do. Perhaps you can let us know if you do commercial applications. But speak to us about the different building types, the different building uses, and where the insulation really comes in and offers those savings to the occupant.
So every building needs insulation. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's a house, if it's an office block, if it's a factory. If the insulation isn't installed for thermal comfort, it will help in reducing noise from the outside or from aircraft and from highways and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So South Africa didn't, for whatever the reason is, we aren't 100% sure, but we didn't think that insulation was necessary when the rest of the world did. It may be because electricity was so cheap when 20 years ago, 50 years ago, because we were using coal and everyone just got an air conditioner for the office. But that's obviously changed, and people are becoming more aware of their energy spend, their comfort, and the environment. So all of that leads to the need for insulation before you consider something like an air conditioner. And it actually starts from the design of the house or the building. If you want to design something that faces east or west and has huge windows, and if there's a lot of concrete and brickwork in it, you're really going to have a terrible experience inside that building, because there's so much heat that's going to get in when the sun's there, and all of that heat will escape when the sun's gone, unless you have double glazing and all sorts of other features to try and combat that. But if you build according to passive design, you mitigate the need for so many additional expenses and technologies that, as great as they are, you don't need them if you design something well in the first place.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, so we're talking about saving money, and saving energy, of course, but it's also, it's at the end of the day, it's about human comfort too, isn't it? I mean,
exactly.
So like I live in Newlands in the Cape, and we live in these houses. I mean, they're it's a concrete block houses, probably built about, I'm guessing, around about 30 or 40 years ago. So yeah. You walk into the house on a winter's day, it's warmer outside the house than it is inside the house, and it actually makes the house unpleasant. So yes, you put a jersey on, close the. Who wants to close the curtains when the sun's still shining? We don't get that much sun in Newlands to begin with. Yeah. So it's really we often comment on what a poorly performing house we live in. From a thermal point of view, and I just wish that. Look, I mean, obviously the answer is just get up in the roof and spray some Thermguard in there, and everything's going to be all right, right? But talk to me about that, because you were talking now about heat. So if you've got a glazed building, obviously a lot of heat's going to get in there. The sun shines, the heat goes inside the building. how does this differ? How does the insulation solve these different problems? Obviously, on the one side, you're keeping warm when it's cold, but on the other side, you're keeping cool when it's hot. And perhaps just talk to us about the different locations in South Africa. So, for example, how would an insulation solve problems, say, in the Cape versus KZN versus Gauteng?
Yeah, so the first thing to sort of mention is that insulation doesn't make something hot or cold. If you put a blanket over a brick, that brick's not going to get warm or something like that. So insulation keeps something warm or it keeps something cool. So a good example would be a cooler box. If you put something cold in the cooler box, it'll stay cold for longer. And if you put something warm in the cooler box, it'll stay warm for longer. And that's all insulation does, is it helps to maintain the temperature of something for a longer period of time. In terms of a building, if a building has been designed well, insulation will keep it warm in winter and it will keep it cool in summer. But if it's if it's a glass building, you're going to have big problems trying to maintain the temperature in that, because the heat from the sun is just going to warm it up very, very quickly. The same goes with a building let's stick with a house that's very shaded. If the sun is not able to get through the windows to warm up the interior space of the house, and there's a lot of brickwork and concrete that's used, that's going to stay cold. But having said that, if you do have a heater or an air conditioner, that unit will not have to work nearly as hard, because the heat that you generate, you will keep inside the house. It's not going to escape through the ceiling. If it's well insulated and if there's a proper there aren't gaps in the insulation in the roof or the walls or the floors, for that matter. It's very important that insulation seals and it seals all the holes. That's why your cooler box seals the good ones. The ones that aren't imported from China and that are made locally, they must seal properly. That's why on your fridge, you've got a seal on your fridge to keep all of that cold air inside the fridge, so that it doesn't leak out of the fridge. And a house is very much the same as a fridge in summer. You want to keep the inside of it cool, and you want to stop that cold air from escaping. And your air conditioner is the same as the fridge motor. So it's the basics of how insulation works. It just helps to maintain the internal temperature.
So if you're in Gauteng, right, you could actually, if you put a bit of heating, well, you'll probably have some heat during the night from the previous night. You'll wake up in the morning, your house will still be quite warm relative to a house with no insulation. And by midday, when you pump the air conditioning, and it keeps that cool air in the house as well.
Yeah, so areas like Gauteng have quite a big, they call it a diurnal temperature difference, which is the difference in temperature between daytime and nighttime. So the idea is that during the day, your curtains will be closed and that heat from the sun won't get into the house, but then your walls will warm up, and at night that heat in your walls will be released into the house, but you'll also open the windows to let cool air into the house at night to cool the interior of the house down. But because we work with so much brickwork and concrete, that's becoming more and more sort of difficult to achieve, because the amount of thermal mass is so high that everything's getting so hot and it takes longer to cool down, and in winter everything gets so cold and it's more difficult to heat it up. So if you replace the exterior walls, especially the brick walls, with insulated walls, lightweight wooden insulated or light steel frame walls, you are much more easily able to control the internal temperature of the house, because you aren't fighting the effects of the sun as much.
Yeah, and so I mean it's an interesting point you raise, and we often see this. So you look at, you watch TV shows where there's building and renovation going on in places like the US and elsewhere, and you see that they often do build with these lightweight structures, and it just doesn't seem to have caught on here to the extent that that perhaps it should have. But tell us a little bit about some of your recent projects. I mean, are you working closely with builders and designers that are perhaps speccing those types of buildings? Perhaps give us some idea of some interesting project you've done recently. Maybe if you have some facts and figures around the levels of savings that might have been achieved. Perhaps it's just the design relative to a model, but maybe just give us some feedback on some recent projects, if you will.
So we at the factory where I'm speaking to you from, we don't do any installations from here, but we've got a network of approved distributors and installers, and they do the installations, and they are they've got relationships with all of the big construction companies, like to mention a few, TriStar, Rawbex, Culver, M3. We're in talks with Baldwin at the moment as well, Stefanuti Stocks. So a lot of low-cost housing developments have Thermguard in them, as well as high-end estate homes, because it works so well. There's no risk of it being removed for use in blankets and clothes. It's not a very attractive product, but it works the best out of all of the products available. And the difference that it makes, it's difficult to quantify because each building is unique, but it will make a difference of typically between 3 and 6 degrees inside the house. You'll feel a difference of between 3 and 6 degrees.
That's massive.
In the space that you're living in. Yeah, no, it's a huge difference. And if you think about the difference between 24 degrees Celsius and 30, that's a big difference, and that's 6 degrees, or 26 and 29 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting point you raised there, because we talk a lot about passive design, obviously within the context of green building, and of course insulation plays a key role in that. But what was interesting to me, and maybe you could just comment, you're commenting on this temperature difference, right? This thermal delta between the outside and the inside. I had opportunity to spend some time in Mauritius, which is similar to Natal, obviously the weather, but a little bit warmer. And what you found in a passively designed building, it wasn't cool in the way that you would, if you walk into a building and the aircon's pumping inside, and you actually get this instant relief from the sun, because you're like walking into a fridge. But you walk into a space that's passively cool, and it's probably about 3 to 5 degrees difference from the ambient temperature outside, but you immediately feel comfortable and happy. And I guess that's what you're referring to in terms of this temperature difference, right?
Yeah. So in South Africa, we used to build we used to build according to passive principles. I don't know, 100 years ago. So very old houses will have verandas or stoops, and that shades the house from direct sunlight. Which means that the whole house stays cooler. They were built of wood. An interesting statistic is about 70% of the world's houses are built from wood.
Wow, I
Not
didn't know that.
brick but wood. So our idea of not building with wood is very far from what the rest of the world's opinion on wood is. I think
Now,
in
it's also
Canada
a problem.
actually, in Canada actually they've built, I think it's an 18-story business office block out of
Yes,
wood.
I've seen
Only
pictures
wood.
of that.
Yeah.
Wow. But this
So
is an interesting. Sorry to chip in there. You mentioned earlier talking about low-cost housing. I understand that one of the barriers to implementing high-tech solutions in low-cost housing, which would be perfectly suited for those types of dwellings, would be high performance from a thermal point of view, would be safer because people need to burn less during cold days, etc., etc. One of the big barriers to implementing these types of technologies is the fact that people in the poor communities want a house from a construction point of view. They want a house that emulates their perception of what wealthy people's houses are, and that's bricks and mortar. And so much so that there's actually a knock test. So a technology that's being introduced, they have a knock test, and if it sounds like wood or if it sounds hollow, then that's a problem. Are you fine? Have you experienced any of that? Is that something you guys deal with?
Yeah, not in the way that you've explained, but it's basically it's resistance to change. It's resistance to something new. It's and it's all about education, and that goes from the most affluent of architect all the way down to the person that's getting an RDP house. They all struggle to shift their mindset to one of green or one of lightweight structure. They want something that's built from bricks, whether it be for strength or whatever. We don't actually. I'm sure there's several reasons, but it's the same with our insulation. People think that because it's made from paper, it's going to burn. The rats and the mice and the birds are going to love it. They're going to eat it. They're going to nest in it. But that's not the case. Our product, as a start, it's SABS approved. The factory is ISO 9001 accredited, so that's a quality standard. And every test that we've done in-house shows that Thermguard or cellulose fiber performs better as an insulator compared to polyester and fiberglass. And now, because climate change is becoming a bigger issue, the fact that Thermguard uses between 10 and 14 times less energy to make, and no water, we don't use any water to make the product. That needs to be considered by architects and clients alike.
No, exactly. I mean, so that's another thing I wanted to chat to you about is, so we've established that insulation in and of itself can have a very positive impact on a building's performance from a thermal point of view, and that leads to improved human comfort. It leads to energy savings, etc., and certainly creates a higher performance building from an environmental point of view. But many of these insulation materials are not themselves inherently good for the environment. I mean, I think of, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of polystyrene. You've mentioned other fibers. Talk us through a little bit about you know, what is happening globally? What's happening in this country? Where does you know, are people aware that there are alternatives? Maybe just comment on that.
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to an education issue. Maybe starting even at university level, the kids maybe aren't being taught enough about the architectural students, but even everyone else that's at school and university aren't being taught enough about recycling, saving electricity, choosing rather something that is more environmentally friendly, locally made. And what we found is when people do learn about it and do know about it, there's a much bigger chance that they will go with the locally produced or the sustainable option, or even if it is at a slightly higher price. They understand the value in it in the broad sense. So something like Thermguard is made from newspapers between 80 and 85%. And then the balance of that is chemicals which are micronized, or it's salts that are basically ground down to a very fine powder and then impregnated into the paper. So it doesn't degrade over time. It's got a lifetime guarantee to insulate and be effective as an insulator. Something like fiberglass.
Yeah, so those chemicals obviously are what give it that fire retardant quality,
yes.
The preservation quality, and also repel insects and rodents and stuff.
Yeah. And when I say chemical, people automatically think, oh, well, chemicals are dangerous or they hazardous. They are. It's the two main chemicals are boric acid and magnesium sulfate. So boric acid is used, and now again I'm saying acid, but remember you also get citric acid, which is from fruit. Boric acid is used as a passive form of pesticide. It's also used in the household in cleaning solutions. It's used in medical fields. It's used in makeup. So boric acid has many uses throughout various industries. Magnesium sulfate is basically Epsom salts. They're used in agriculture. They used boric acid as well is used in agriculture to promote plant health. It's used also as fillers in some feed. So there's a whole range of other applications that these chemicals are used for. Thermguard is non-toxic, non-allergenic. You can hold it, you can rub it on your face. It won't give you a rash or anything like that. So it's a very safe product.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, well, look, so from my point of view, it's been great chatting with you and great to have you on the show. Perhaps just in conclusion, before I hand over to Byron, I've got one more question for you, and that's perhaps just to tell us, what does the future hold? What are you guys working on? Is there some, what's your immediate strategy? Obviously, we're just coming out of COVID. There's all sorts of doom and gloom, but also the sprouts already popping up. Perhaps talk us about your perception of where it's going, specific the industry, perhaps generally, but more specifically, are we going to push towards perhaps these more innovative building styles where the role of insulation is more obvious and more valuable? So yeah, perhaps just hand over to you on that basis, and thank you very much from my side.
Yeah, so COVID really sort of put a spanner in the works, but fortunately we made it out intact. And I think that COVID's also given, everyone in the world a bit of a wake-up call as well, and they've realized that we can't do things that we used to do, and you can do things differently. You don't need to have all of your meetings in person. You don't need to get into your car to drive to somewhere to have a meeting. You don't need to fly somewhere to have a meeting. You can support your local tourism industry and restaurants. Those types of things is maybe a better idea than just international travel all the time. So in the same way, the world has realized that sustainability should be brought to the forefront. Sustainable products should be used over products that aren't sustainable, and we are seeing an uptrend in that. We members of the Green Building Council, so we attend a lot of their now online Planet Shapers events, and we get a lot of information from that. But also just speaking to people in general, we realize that people have realized that they need to become more sustainable. They need to rather buy products that are better for the world in general, as opposed to products that are just cheap. We've also recently, in the last sort of, I guess, year, received quite a bit more interest in wall insulations, in light steel frame and wood frame houses. So that and this is from developers also wanting to be EDGE certified. So there is a trend towards sustainable and building responsibly, but it's maybe not as quick as what we'd like. But you can't ask for everything. Yeah.
Byron's on mute there.
Yeah.
I was muting myself because I was listening this time. Yeah. I always interact, but it's a lot of info to take in, and it's a lot of information. And thank you so much for coming on the show and being brave enough to share it with us, because it just shows that you believe in your product and you believe what you guys are putting out there, and especially during this COVID time, that what you were mentioning there is quite important. But guys, I'm gonna sign off. Maybe catch you in studio if you guys have time. I'm gonna sign off so long. You can say ta-ta to our viewers and catch you guys.
Bye-bye very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks again,
Bye-bye.
Scott. Bye.
Yeah, so guys, if you caught the live and catching this on the replay, just hashtag replay. It's on YouTube, on Facebook, or on our website. Such an informative conversation, especially when you're stuck at home. You do want to keep it cozy, so give them a call. I'll just pop that website there. That's thermguard.co.za. Give them a call if you want to stay cozy at home. And if you're also self-conscious about sustainability, that's what we're all about. Give them a call. They will go through it with you. So like I say each week, we're just here to engage and to enlighten you. Keep it sustainable.